Welcome to the deep dive. And I think we have a topic today that's, well, it's going to hit close to home for just about everyone.
I think that's putting it mildly. Procrastination.
Right. That feeling when you stare at a blank screen, you know you have a huge project to start, and then, I don't know, 30 minutes goes by, and suddenly you're an expert on how bread was made in a 14th century French monastery.
You finally decide it's the perfect time to organize your sock drawer. Anything but the actual task.
Yes, anything but that. If that sounds at all familiar, you are definitely in the right place. That struggle, that feeling of active resistance, it's universal.
It truly is. And for decades, the common diagnosis, the one we tell ourselves, is that it's just laziness or maybe a lack of discipline.
A moral failing almost.
Exactly. And that diagnosis is not just wrong, it's actually harmful because it takes this really complex behavioral mechanism and it just flattens it into a character flaw.
And that's not what we're doing today. Today, we are moving way past those surface symptoms. We're going to dive deep into the core psychological and neurological reasons that actually drive procrastination.
Yeah, we've got a great stack of research here. We're pulling from behavioral science, neuroscience, studies on the frontal lobe, and they all tell a very, very different story about why we delay things.
So what's our mission for this deep dive?
Our mission is to give you, the listener, a shortcut. We want you to be truly well-informed on this. So we're going to define what procrastination really is.
Not just the lazy diagnosis.
Not at all. We'll look at the internal wiring of the brain that actually reinforces the habit of delay. And then, most importantly, we're going to pull out the practical, really battle-tested solutions that help you break that cycle.
So you can move from just understanding it to actually doing something about it.
From analysis to action. That's the goal.
Okay, let's unpack this. So to start, I think we have to just completely tear down the most common idea about this.
The time management myth.
Exactly. When people feel that guilt, that shame about procrastinating, they almost always think, I have a time management problem. If I just had a better calendar, or if I could just wake up an hour earlier.
Right. If I use this new app, all my problems would be solved. But what the sources make incredibly clear is that time is a casualty of procrastination. It's not the cause.
So if it's not about time, what is it about?
It's about feelings. Procrastination, at its core, is an emotional problem. It is fundamentally a strategy for emotional regulation.
Emotional regulation. Can you break that down a bit?
Sure. We're not avoiding the task itself. We're avoiding the uncomfortable feelings that the task brings up in us. If this was really about logic and maximizing our time, our rational brain would win every single time.
Of course. It would say, start early, reduce your stress, do a better job.
Precisely. But that's not what happens. The delay mechanism is pure instinctual emotional avoidance. We're running away from a bad feeling.
Wow. Okay, so that's a huge shift in perspective. It means the strategy isn't about forcing yourself to work. It's about managing your feelings about the work.
That is the essential pivot. You have to focus on the feeling first. The brain is an incredible prediction machine. It's constantly scanning the future for potential discomfort. And when it spots it, it triggers this whole avoidance sequence.
So what are some of these task-linked feelings that we're so desperate to escape?
Well, they fall into a few clear categories. Let's take a really boring task, like data entry or filling out some long, complicated form.
Yes.
That task generates pure, unadulterated boredom. And the brain hates boredom. It sees it as a negative state, and it immediately starts screaming for stimulation to get away from it.
So it looks for something shiny, a notification, an email.
Anything. Then you have the difficult task. This one doesn't trigger boredom, it triggers fear.
Fear of what, exactly?
It could be fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, fear that you'll be judged for the result if it's not perfect. It's an ego threat.
And what about those huge, high-stakes projects? The ones with a million moving parts that could make or break your quarter?
That's the third category, overwhelming stress and pressure. The sheer weight of the task feels crushing, and the brain's immediate reaction is to just push it away to get some breathing room.
I feel like there's one more, and for me, it's the most paralyzing.
Let me guess. The unclear task.
Yes, the one where you don't even know what step one is. Your boss just says, figure this out, and there's no clear path forward.
That one generates confusion. And confusion creates what psychologists call cognitive friction. It's a high-effort state for the brain. The brain experiences that friction and just says, abort mission, find something simple, now.
That idea of cognitive friction is so important. Our brains are, by nature, kind of
Mm.
lazy, right? They want to conserve energy.
They're fantastic energy conservationists.
Yeah.
So if a task demands more mental energy right now than the brain is willing to spend, it will always look for an escape valve.
And that escape is never just sitting there staring at the wall.
Never. It's an active avoidance. It's seeking an immediate low-effort hit of dopamine. Checking social media, watching a quick video, even doing what some researchers call productivity.
Thought activity, I love that. What is it?
It's when you suddenly feel an overwhelming urge to do another easier task. Like you have to write a report, but first you absolutely must reorganize your email inbox.
You feel like you're being productive, but you're really just hiding.
It's a very sophisticated form of hiding. And here's the dangerous part. The moment you escape to that easier thing, you get a rush of relief, a little hit of dopamine. Your brain goes, ah, that feels better.
So it reinforces the behavior.
It tells the whole system, that worked. Next time you feel that stress, do this again. And that's the loop.
So the big synthesis here, the formula, is just the brain choosing comfort over discomfort every time. It's an instant emotional choice that completely ignores what's going to happen tomorrow.
That's it in a nutshell.
Okay, so we've got the emotional equation down. Brain chooses comfort over discomfort. But now let's get into the who. Who is making this choice inside our heads? And this is where it gets really interesting because it's not one unified self.
No, it's not. It's more like a battle. The research points to two distinct brain systems that are basically locked in this perpetual fight for control of the steering wheel.
And we can actually feel that fight, can't we? That part of you that knows what you should do and the other part that just doesn't want to.
That's the conflict right there. On one side, you have what we can call the reward system. This is the feel-good now part of your brain.
And on the other side,
The executive system. That's the do the work part.
let's start with the one that seems to win most of the time, the reward system. Tell me about that. Where is it? What does it want?
The reward system is ancient. It's rooted in the older, more instinctual parts of the brain, like the limbic system. A key player is an area called the nucleus accumbens, which is basically the brain's pleasure and reward hub.
So its goal is pretty simple.
Its goal is pure, simple, short-term pleasure. Maximize comfort, avoid pain, get a reward. It doesn't plan for the future. It just reacts to the present. Its entire currency is instant gratification, which, in brain terms, is dopamine.
And you can almost hear its voice, can't you? It's that little whisper that
Let's
says,
just relax for a minute. Or, ooh, that notification looks interesting. Let's check it. Or simply, this is boring and hard. Let's do literally anything else. It loves anything that gives a quick, easy hit. Snacks, social media, funny videos, games.
okay, so that's the impulsive toddler in our head. Now let's talk about the responsible adult in the room, the executive system.
Right. This system is much newer, evolutionarily speaking. It lives mostly in your prefrontal cortex, the PFC, right behind your forehead. This is the most sophisticated part of the human brain.
And it's in charge of all the hard stuff.
All the hard stuff. Logical reasoning, long-term planning, impulse control, understanding future consequences, all the things you need to do to complete a big, complex project that doesn't have an immediate payoff.
So this is the part of us that knows, logically, if I study tonight, I'll get a good grade next week. Or if I finish this report, I might get that promotion.
Exactly. Its internal monologue is all about long-term value. You should finish this assignment. You need to start exercising for your health. It knows what you should do. It has all the facts.
So here's the million-dollar question. We have the logical, rational executive system that knows what's best for us in the long run. And we have impulsive, short-sighted reward system. Why does the toddler win the argument so often?
It comes down to two things, energy and emotion. The reward system is instinctual. It's low energy. It fires automatically. But the PFC, the executive system, it's incredibly energy hungry.
It takes real effort to use it.
A ton of effort. And when a task feels difficult or stressful or boring, meaning it generates those uncomfortable emotions we talked about, that feeling acts like an emergency alarm in the brain.
It's the discomfort that gives the reward system its power.
It turbocharges it. Stress, in particular, acts as a massive amplifier. Your amygdala, which is the brain's threat detector, goes on high alert. It perceives the discomfort as a kind of danger, even if it's just a spreadsheet.
And it wants to get to safety as fast as possible.
And the fastest route to safety is instant comfort. So the emotional alarm makes the reward system's voice louder, stronger, and much more active than the calm, rational voice of the executive system. The PFC basically gets overwhelmed and shouted down by the emotional rush.
And that's when we start negotiating with ourselves. We don't say, I'm never doing this. We say,
I'll start later, or I'll do it tomorrow.
I'll feel more like it in the morning.
Right. We're punting the task to future you. And the irony is, future you is a mythical hero who doesn't exist. You're just handing an even bigger, more stressful problem to yourself tomorrow.
The crucial insight here for anyone listening is that this isn't a sign that you're broken or have a character defect.
Not at all. It's a systems conflict. It's a protective mechanism that's just misfiring in the modern world. Your brain is trying to defend you from short-term stress, even though that defense ultimately makes your life harder. Once you frame it that way, you can stop shaming yourself and start strategically training the system.
So that choice to delay, that decision to protect ourselves in the short term, it's rarely just a one-off event, is it?
No, it's a pattern. It
Yeah.
sets up this self-reinforcing loop that just gets stronger every time you go through it. We call it the vicious procrastination cycle.
And if you can learn to recognize the steps in this cycle as they're happening, you have a chance to step in and break it.
That's the key. Mapping it out shows you how the negative feelings from yesterday's procrastination actually become the fuel for today's procrastination.
Okay, so let's walk through it. Step one seems pretty simple. You have a task.
Right. It starts there. You have a report to write, a garage to clean, a call to make. And like we said, if that task feels big or unclear or boring, the stage is already set.
Which leads immediately to step two. You feel discomfort.
And this happens instantly. It's not a slow burn. It's an immediate recognition of the stress or the fear or the confusion tied to that task. This is the moment the alarm bells go off for the reward system.
And that's its cue to initiate the escape plan, which is step three, your brain seeks escape.
This is the act of avoidance. This is the moment you make the choice. You pick up your phone, you open a new tab, you go get a snack, you reply to a non-urgent email, you grab on to the low-friction distraction.
And for a moment, it works. Which brings us to step four. You feel temporary relief.
Yes, the payoff. You get that little squirt of dopamine that validates your choice. For a few minutes, maybe even an hour, you feel better because you successfully dodged that negative feeling.
Correct.
The reward system is essentially patting itself on the back.
The task is still there. The deadline is still looming. And the rational part of your brain, the executive system, it knows.
It knows, and it's not happy. That brings us to step five. You feel guilt and regret. The relief wears off, and reality crashes back in. The logical brain confronts the fact that you've wasted time and the task is still undone.
And that feeling of failure, that guilt, is a whole new layer of discomfort.
It's a secondary emotional burden,
Right.
and it feeds directly into the final and most damaging step in the cycle. Step six, the discomfort grows even bigger.
So the task itself is now even more intimidating.
Exponentially so. It now has all the original discomfort. It's still hard or boring or unclear. Plus, the added weight of your guilt, your self-criticism, and the pressure of a now tighter deadline. The stress is compounded.
And because the stress is now so much higher,
The brain's instinct to escape is even stronger than it was the first time.
so when you face the task again, your brain is even more likely to seek escape, which sends you right back to step three, starting the whole cycle over again.
Wow, it really is vicious.
It's a downward spiral. And the practical takeaway from understanding this cycle is that your intervention point isn't about scheduling your time better. It's about managing the emotions that come up in step two, that initial discomfort, and step five, the compounding guilt. If you can lower those feelings, you can break the loop. Okay, so we've established that discomfort is the engine of this whole cycle. But that feels a little abstract. What specifically is creating that discomfort in the first place?
That's the next level down. We have to look at the root causes. The behavioral research points to about 6 primary triggers, these specific friction points that kick off that whole emotional flight response.
And if we can address these roots directly, we can stop the cycle before it even starts.
That's the goal, preemptive action.
All right, number one. This feels like the most common one to me, the one that triggers that anxiety-based delay. The task feels too big.
This is all about cognitive overload. Your brain sees a task like write a 10-page report or plan the entire family vacation, and it doesn't see a series of small steps. It sees one single, monstrous, unmanageable entity.
A giant wall with no handholds.
A perfect analogy. The sheer scope of it triggers immediate stress because the executive system can't easily break it down. It sees the enormous effort required, and the reward system, which wants to conserve energy, just hits the panic button and initiates immediate avoidance. That feeling of, I don't even know where to begin,
Yeah.
That's a protective mechanism.
That connects right into the second cause, which is closely related. The task feels unclear.
Yes. Vagueness is the enemy of action. Clarity is the oxygen it needs to survive. If your task is just fix the website or organize my notes, your brain doesn't have a clear, immediate action to take.
So it spins its wheels just trying to figure out what to do.
Exactly. The PSC has to spend all this valuable energy just defining the scope instead of actually executing. And if you can't identify step one in, like 5 seconds, the friction is too high. The brain's default is, well, since I can't figure out the first move, I'll just put this whole thing off until I magically have more clarity later.
A clarity that never comes on its own.
Right. And we misinterpret that friction as being lazy.
Okay, number 3. This one's much deeper, much more emotional. Fear of failure. This isn't just about getting a bad grade, is it?
No, this goes right to the core of our identity. It's about ego protection. The research shows this is intensely linked to our sense of self-worth. If the quality of your work is tied to how smart or competent you feel you are,
Then doing the work is a huge risk.
a massive risk. Avoiding the task becomes this perverse form of self-protection. If you don't really try, you can't really fail. If you wait until the last minute and then do a rushed, subpar job, you always have a built-in excuse.
I'm not incompetent, I just ran out of time.
Exactly. You externalize the failure. The brain would rather create a scenario where you fail because of circumstances than risk a scenario where you might fail because you weren't good enough. It's a psychological shield.
And that's why this is so common in high achievers and perfectionists.
Precisely. The stakes are so high for them that the potential ego-crushing of failure becomes completely paralyzing.
The fourth cause is one we might overlook because it's so physical. Low energy.
You cannot talk about procrastination without talking about resource depletion. That PFC, your executive system, is an energy hog. It's like the most power-hungry app on your phone.
So when your battery is low,
It's the first thing to shut down. When you're tired or hungry or just mentally fried from a long day, your capacity for high-level thinking plummets. Your brain has to conserve its limited resources, so it defaults back to the old, energy-efficient reward system. When you're low on fuel, you will always choose the path of least resistance. Always.
number 5 is an external one, or rather, the lack of an external one. No deadlines.
Yes. The absence of a hard deadline is basically a green light for the reward system to run wild. If a task is important but not urgent, your PFC has no leverage. It has no external reason to override the powerful impulse for immediate comfort.
It just keeps getting pushed further and further into that mythical later.
It's a phenomenon called temporal discounting. Basically, the reward for finishing the task now feels tiny and abstract compared to the very real, very immediate comfort of scrolling Instagram now. It's only when the deadline gets terrifyingly close that the discomfort of future failure finally outweighs the discomfort of doing the task.
And only then does the PFC finally get enough juice to take control.
It's a desperate last-minute power grab.
And finally, number 6, which brings us full circle back to ego, the great paradox of perfectionism.
Perfectionism is such a fascinating trap because it's avoidance that's disguised as a virtue. You tell yourself, I'm not procrastinating, I just have very high standards.
But those high standards are the problem.
They're the whole problem. The goal you set is so impossibly high, the work has to be flawless, groundbreaking, perfect, that the gap between where you are now at a blank page and that perfect end result feels immense. It feels insurmountable.
And the brain reads that gap as overwhelming discomfort.
Absolutely. The fear of producing anything that falls short of that impossible standard triggers intense avoidance. The only way to guarantee your work is never criticized for being imperfect is to make sure the work is never finished or never even started.
It's really just a specific flavor of the fear of failure.
It is. And the key is to recognize that. If you're paralyzed by perfectionism, the work isn't to try to make a better product. The work is to confront the underlying fear that you are not good enough.
Okay. We have spent a lot of time mapping the problem, the cycle, the emotional drivers, the root causes. I think everyone listening now has a pretty clear picture of what's happening inside their head.
We've diagnosed the issue.
Exactly. So now we have to transition to the toolkit, the application phase. What can you actually do about it? We've pulled 7 very concrete, very simple methods from the research that are designed to bypass that reward system and retrain your brain.
And it's important to note, these aren't about trying harder or finding some mythical source of willpower. They are behavioral hacks. They work because they lower the emotional barrier to starting.
They make the cost of action lower than the cost of inaction.
That's the whole game.
All right, let's start with what might be the single most effective strategy for that initial push, the 2-minute rule.
The biggest hurdle in all of procrastination is just getting started. It's the inertia. Going from 0 to 1, the 2-minute rule is so powerful because it's deceptively simple.
So what's the instruction?
You just tell yourself, I will do this task for only 2 minutes, and after 2 minutes, I have full permission to stop. You're not committing to finishing the essay. You're just committing to opening the document and typing for 120 seconds.
Why does that work? 2 minutes feels almost trivial.
It works because it's trivial. 2 minutes is so small that the reward system can't mount a credible fear response. It doesn't trigger the amygdala's alarm because the commitment is basically 0. But then, something amazing happens once you start the action.
It's easier to keep going.
It's much easier. An object in motion stays in motion. You activate parts of your brain related to habit and momentum. The internal friction plummets. And very often, those 2 minutes just naturally stretch into 10 minutes or 20. You're basically tricking your brain into starting so that momentum can take over.
The goal isn't to finish, it's just to start.
That's the mindset shift.
Yeah.
You manufacture momentum where none existed before.
Okay, solution 2. This one directly attacks that too big root cause we talked about. Break the task into tiny pieces.
This is all about reducing that cognitive overload until the task feels emotionally safe. The wrong way is to look at your to-do list and see clean the entire house. That just creates instant stress.
So what's the right way?
You have to get hyper-specific and miniaturize the action. It's not clean the house, it's take the dirty dishes from the living room and put them in the sink. That's it. That's the whole task.
And for something less physical, like writing that 10-page report?
It's not write the report. It's open a new document and write one sentence for the introduction. Or even just brainstorm 3 possible titles. The unit of work has to be so ridiculously small that the stress associating with it is basically 0.
Small tasks equal low stress.
Low stress means the executive system can actually do its job without being hijacked by the reward system's panic attack.
All right, method number 3. This might be the easiest one to implement right now. Remove the distractions.
This is non-negotiable. We really underestimate the power of our environment to shape our actions. We already established that the reward system loves easy dopamine hits. If your phone is sitting right there on your desk, buzzing.
Your brain is going to take the bait.
Every time. You can't rely on willpower to fight that battle over and over again. It's exhausting.
So the practical steps have to be pretty serious.
They have to be. It's about environmental design, not willpower. Put the phone in a completely different room. Use a website blocking app on your computer. Create what's called friction. Make it harder to get to your distraction than it is to just continue with your work.
So if you have to get up, walk to the kitchen, and enter a passcode to get your phone, you might just decide it's not worth the effort.
Exactly. Your brain's own energy conservation instinct starts working for you instead of against you.
Okay, number 4, which tackles the unclear problem. Make the task clear.
Vague intentions are a playground for procrastination. If your goal is work on my project, your brain freezes. Doesn't know what that means. Has to spend energy planning, and that's when the debate starts.
You have to remove that initial hurdle of figuring out what to do.
You have to pre-decide. Translate every vague goal into a concrete, physical, immediate first action. Not work on my finances, but open my banking app and categorize the last 5 transactions.
So it's super specific.
As specific as possible. I will write the subject line of that difficult email. When the instruction is that clear, the executive system knows exactly what to do. There's no room for debate, no space for the reward system to jump in and suggest you do something else instead.
Solution number 5. This one feels really important for people who feel constantly overwhelmed. Use the just one goal method.
Yes. We live in this culture of endless to-do lists, which creates this constant low-grade hum of pressure. And we know pressure and stress just feed the reward system. The just one goal method is about radical prioritization.
So you pick one thing for the day, and that's it.
You pick your one most important task, or MIT, the one thing that, if you get it done, will make the day a success. Everything else is a bonus.
How does that help with procrastination?
It creates emotional clarity and safety. If you get that one thing done, you've won the day. It dramatically lowers the pressure. You're not trying to conquer a list of 20 things. You're focusing all your finite mental energy on overcoming the friction for just one task. It makes success feel achievable, which dials down the fear of failure.
All right, number 6. This feels like the biggest mindset shift of all. Don't wait for motivation.
This is the one that trips everyone up. Procrastinators operate under the false belief that motivation is something you have to have before you can start. They wait for this wave of inspiration to hit them.
And it never comes.
Or if it does, it's fleeting and unreliable. The neuroscience is crystal clear on this. Motivation is not the cause of action. Motivation is the effect of action.
So action creates motivation, not the other way around.
You have to reverse the sequence. You start when you're unmotivated. You use the 2-minute rule or a tiny task to just get the ball rolling. The moment you complete that first tiny action, your brain gets a little feedback loop of success, a tiny hit of dopamine. That feeling is motivation. It's the fuel that makes you want to do the next tiny thing.
It's an action, which leads to motivation, which leads to more action.
That's the loop. You have to trust that the feeling will come after you start, not before.
And finally, solution 7, which is about working with the reward system instead of against it. Reward yourself.
Right. If the brain is fundamentally a pleasure-seeking machine, let's use that. We need to strategically re-engineer the association it has with hard work. We have to train it to connect the discomfort of effort with the certainty of a future pleasure.
So we're basically bribing our own brain.
We are, and it works. You create a clear structure. First I do the work, then I get the reward. And the reward has to be immediate and genuinely enjoyable.
Give me some concrete examples of that pairing.
It could be, if I work for 25 focused minutes, I will let myself watch one 5-minute YouTube video. Or after I write one full paragraph, I will get up and make myself a really nice cup of tea. The key is the clear if-then structure and the immediacy. Over time, your brain starts to anticipate the reward, which actually lowers the initial resistance to starting the task. The task starts to feel less like a threat and more like the gateway to a treat.
To really drive home the power of these solutions, especially that idea of making things tiny, there's a simple story from our source material that I think just perfectly illustrates it.
Oh, the story of the student in the essay. Yes, this is a perfect case study. It shows the whole emotional equation in action and how a simple hack can short-circuit the entire vicious cycle.
So the situation is a student has a 10-page essay due, and every time he even thought about it, let alone sat down to work on it, he felt this immediate crushing anxiety.
That's the two big root cause in action.
Yeah.
His brain saw 10 pages as a single monstrous threat to his comfort and energy. So the reward system's only logical response was total avoidance.
Exactly. He'd sit down, feel the overwhelm, immediately look for an escape, and then fall into that guilt cycle we talked about, day after day.
A classic procrastination spiral.
But then he decided to try something different. He took that idea of breaking the task into tiny pieces to an extreme. He completely abandoned the goal of writing a page or even a paragraph. His new daily commitment was to write just one sentence.
And one sentence is so small, it's emotionally non-threatening.
Yeah.
The reward system literally can't mount a fear response to that. The cognitive load is practically zero. He lowered the barrier to entry so far that it was easier to do it than to not do it.
Right. So he would sit down. His only goal was to write one single sentence. But of course, once he had written one, the inertia was broken.
The friction was gone.
And he'd often find himself writing a few more sentences, maybe even a whole paragraph. He never aimed for the 10 pages. He only ever aimed for that one sentence, and he let the momentum do the rest of the work.
And what was the end result?
The essay was finished in 10 days, and critically, it was done without that storm of stress and fear and guilt, because he never had to face the 10-page monster. He only ever had to face one manageable sentence at a time.
That story is the whole lesson in a nutshell. Great, difficult, complex things are always built from a series of tiny, non-threatening actions. The real challenge is never the work itself. It's the emotional friction of starting. If you make the first step small enough, you neutralize the trigger.
And this really leads to the final, most important insight we want to leave you, the listener, with. It is time to change the story you tell yourself about this. The next time you feel that urge to delay, please remember, this is not proof that you are lazy. It's not a sign that you are weak.
You were simply human. Your brain is a survival machine that evolved over millions of years to conserve energy and shield you from things that feel bad. When you procrastinate, that's just your system trying to protect you. It's a faulty protection mechanism in our modern world, but the intention is protective.
So the goal has to shift away from self-criticism and shame.
And toward strategic training. You are not fighting a moral war with yourself. You are gently and patiently training an ancient operating system to function in a world of delayed rewards it was never designed for.
And that training is done with these small, consistent actions we've been talking about.
Exactly. Start small, take one tiny step, commit to just 2 minutes, remove the phone from the room. Make your next action crystal clear. Reward yourself for showing up. That is the path. That is how you build discipline, focus, and ultimately a version of yourself that you can truly rely on. Hashtag outro, Gomer.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the emotional heart of procrastination. We really hope that understanding this internal mechanism, this conflict between your executive system and your reward system, gives you some clarity and, more importantly, a real toolkit to manage your focus.
And as we close out, let's just revisit that core conflict one last time. Your brain's ancient default setting is always to choose comfort right now. That 2 minutes of scrolling, that brief moment of escape. You have to learn to consciously weigh the true cost of that choice.
So there's a question we should ask ourselves in that moment of temptation.
There is. Every single time you feel that irresistible pull to delay, ask yourself this one question. Am I willing to trade these 2 minutes of comfort right now for 2 hours of stress, anxiety, and regret later?
When you frame it like that, focusing on the long-term emotional cost, it really does shift the entire calculation. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and just keep taking those tiny steps forward.